أشرف المرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا مولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا، اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك آمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله
ورحمة
وبركاته.
الله.
Alhamdulillah, Bismillah. I pray that you and your family are all well, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah. I think, as you all know, it's been a very difficult week for especially the students of Maulana Taha, and our request is that all of you are in fervent dua for him, even if you don't know him. He is someone who is extremely special and valuable within our community, and a great gift to us. And our dua is that Allah must increase this gift, increase the gift that He has given us, grant him full recovery, and grant him to be in service of this ummah and to be a shining light and a leading light for many more years to come, inshallah ta'ala. Did Mullah Zakaria speak about it a bit, or some of the other teachers about the Khatam of Bukhari yesterday?
Not the Khatam itself, but about Maulana Taha. We just had a whole discussion about Maulana Taha Quran. But if Maulana can tell us the significance of the Khatam of Bukhari, I couldn't understand why, particularly a Khatam of Bukhari.
Okay, so basically, there's, in situations like this, there are what we call the normal means, which in Arabic we would call the al-asbab al-adiyah. The normal means we take, for example, if someone is ill and then they seek medical treatment, they have medical interventions, and that's the normal means. And there's something called the sabab al-haqiqi. There is the one that is truly the cause of everything, which is Allah Ta'ala. So within our belief system, within our within our aqidah, is that when we live in this life, we constantly adopt the normal means. Meaning, what if we want to be safe, we take means of protection. If we want to get rizq, we go work and we trade. If we want health, we live healthily. If we want cure, we take medication and consult medical experts and so on. So we are constantly utilizing the normal means, and that is part of the deen and part of the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At the same time, knowing that the one that truly is the provider is Allah, the one that is truly is the protector is Allah, the one that is truly is the teacher is Allah, the one that is truly is the healer is Allah. And that becomes more acute, that reality becomes more acute when someone is in a critical state, when the normal means have been exhausted and the doctors are saying, we have done what we can and the rest is in the hands of Allah Ta'ala. And then almost like the asbabul idea has reached its limit. There's nothing more that can be done that has not been done already. And then it becomes even more acute that one recognizes that at all times, and especially in this case, everything is in the hands of Allah Ta'ala. And then the only thing you can do is make dua. The only thing you can do is pray. And in that there's a great spiritual benefit, because it reminds us of the fact that in the end Allah is always the one that is in control, and that His will always come to pass, and that if we need anything we have to turn to Him. And so there is a great effect on that. And there are many means of dua. So one of the means of dua are the means of what we call like tawassul. And a tawassul maybe is a term that needs lots of unpacking, but the idea of tawassul is that you do something, or you do something at a certain time or in a certain place, and by that means and by that barakah you ask Allah to answer your dua. So a simple example is that in Cape Town we often read a khatam for someone. So we read a khatam of Quran, And at the conclusion of the Quran, we ask by the barakah of the Quran, by that moment of the completion of the Quran, may Allah answer our du'as, may Allah heal the sick, may Allah forgive those who have passed away, and so on. So we do that as a tawassul by a certain action, a tawassul by a certain action. Um, so, for example, someone could fast, and when they're breaking their fast, you could make a special dua by this action Allah I have done for your sake. Please forgive this person. Please heal this person. Please elevate this person. Um, and so that is established within the Sunnah. You can also make tawassul by a place as well. For example, you could be in a very holy place. You could be in front of the Kaaba and say, Ya Allah, by the blessings of this beautiful haram, this holy house of yours, grant this person shifa, grant this person a long life, or whatever the case, or you in Medina, or you're in Masjid al-Aqsa, or you're in the house of Allah, Ya Allah, by me being in your house, you can make tawassul by that. You can also make tawassul by time as well, by a special time. For example, maybe in the last nights of Ramadan, you say, Allah, by the virtue of this last night, answer my dua. You could be in the last third of the night. Ya Allah, by the virtue of your responsiveness in this last third of the night, make this dua, or on Yawmul Jumu'ah, by the special day of Jumu'ah. So you can make tawassul by actions and by places and and by time. Those are the common tawassul accepted by all the scholars. There's no ikhtilaf on these things. That's accepted by all the scholars. So out of tajriba, it's called tajriba, means it's not transmitted to us, it's by experience, is that scholars have recommended that when you read the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the conclusion of that gathering, you can make dua by the barakah of those hadiths shared. May Allah grant this person health or forgiveness or Jannah, whatever the case. In other words, you can make a dua at the conclusion of the reading of a hadith. So this has been like we call it a scholarly practice in a sense, because obviously when we read hadith, we are quoting the words and actions and descriptions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every time we read a hadith, we're making salawat, because every time we say qala Allah, qala Rasulullah, you must say sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're making salawat with every hadith. So we read Bukhari yesterday. We probably read in excess of 6,000 hadith. 6,000 salawat was made at the minimum, if not much more. And then also with regard to reading hadith also, so it's the words, actions, and description of the Prophet ﷺ, it's abundance of salawat. And you also mention the names of thousands of sahaba, thousands of awliya and salihin. You're mentioning all of their names in the gathering, and that by the blessedness of that, and the reason for Bukhari, obviously Bukhari is considered to be the most reliable collection of the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's kind of the pinnacle of a hadith collection. So for that reason, Bukhari was chosen to be read. It must have been probably a first in Cape Town. That we started after Asr, and we finished by Isha. About 60, 70 of Monata students and some other ulama came together, and each one takes a few hadith, and at the same time, simultaneously, we all read from Bukhari, because it's quite lengthy. It's a few thousand hadith. And then at the end of that, a dua is made for the shifa by virtue of all those hadith narrated. So that's basically the event. Are there any questions or comments? I'm not sure what Mullah Zakaria spoke about. It's hard to describe our appreciation of him and the amount of emotion. It's very hard to describe. It's hard to describe to someone who it's just a relationship that's hard to describe. And so Nazreen, Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum, Maulana. It's not Nazreen. It's I'm using a computer.
Bismillah.
Maulana, I mean, I completely honest, the Maulana Taha was virtually unknown to me before I joined Mizan, and even now, I think, and hearing you and Maulana Zakaria speak about him, it feels as if there was a huge opportunity for us that we have missed by not knowing such a person and not knowing or not being part of uh, something that he had built or we hadn't learned from him. And I think I would like to be unpacked at some point so that we can actually get to know this person and what he's done for this community, for knowledge in this area, you know, which
Yes,
I don't
yes.
think we have. I haven't certainly been part of it, and I'm not sure if how everybody else feels.
Yeah, no, so I think definitely all of you, it would be unlikely that any of you sat in the class of Mullah Taha. So first of all, to mention that by you being at Mizan Institute, you are you are basically uh, part of the legacy of Mullah Taha. Myself, Mullah Muhammad, Mullah Rishad, Mullah Zakaria, Mullah Yazid, Mullah Abdullah, we are all students of Mullah Taha, and what you hear from us is hearing from him. So first of all, that is, even though he himself is not known, his legacy is manifest. I mean, everywhere in Cape Town, you're going to look. Abdul Rahman Khan is also a student as well from DTI. Everywhere in Cape Town, you're going to look. Maulana Ali Kaudi from Dawrah used to be a teacher at Maltaz Madrasa as well. Maulana Ma'ad Ali used to be a teacher at Maltaz Madrasa as well. He had a profound effect on them as well. Everywhere you look in Cape Town, you're going to see the effect of Maulana Taha. And I understand that students haven't experienced him directly because number one, he's utterly a humble person who he just doesn't like the spotlight. He just has that. He's completely self-effacing if you're with him, and he doesn't like to be in the limelight, in the spotlight. That's the reason. So you won't see him on a lot of videos and in Juma khutbahs and like a upfront, a public, very public alim. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that his scholarship is on such a level where it's more ideal for him to be the teacher of the teachers than the teacher of the public, if you know what I mean. He does do public talks now and then, but his time is really spent being the teacher of the teachers. He's our teacher. Because and I'll be honest with you, it's hard to explain why, but when I sit in Monata's class, it's almost like I don't feel I should be there because um, it's just such a different level, and um, that's the feeling a person gets sometimes, and it's such a level where he wouldn't be ideally. I mean, he does do some public stuff, but he wouldn't be ideally placed to do like we do the public stuff because it's kind of like on the lower level of engagement. In other words, it's almost like you're like a super professor. You can't speak to a high school crowd because there's such a huge gap. You rather speak to your PhD and your master students because they would basically be better suited to take guidance from you. So that's more of where he's positioned, number one. And number two also is that a lot of his time is spent on dealing with very contemporary issues like contemporary fatwa, contemporary methods of Islamic finance. So he has a lot of institutional engagements that he's involved in and international conferences and so on. So he's quite busy. And the last thing I would say is that there are talks. You can check out Muslim Central. You'll find his biography there, a number of his talks there. So there is a way for you to benefit from his recordings. You go to YouTube, you'll find some talks of his, um, and so on. So you'll definitely find some things about him, but he's not going to be your kind of public scholar, if that makes sense. Just because of where he's positioned and also his personality as well. So Tawhida, Bismillah.
Just another story I was relating to Maulana Zakaria also. And I recommended the others also to listen to the Iktikaf of 2019 of Mizan Institute, where they discussed the biographies of the different scholars that we had here in Cape Town. And I found that, and one of it was his father. So maybe in the line of that as a recommendation. And just another added value, Maulana Mu'adh Ali mentioned one time that him and Maulana Taha went together to Egypt to this book convention in Egypt. And Maulana Mu'adh Ali says then you would have people begging. These families, they come out, they're begging for money. And Maulana Mu'adh Ali says, no, I give my certain amount. But Maulana Taha would just put in his hand, in his pocket, and just hand it over. And so one day Maulana Taha is not with, and only Maulana Mu'adh Ali went to the convention. And then as he came out, the families are asking, where is Maulana Taha? Where? I don't want you, I want Maulana Taha. Because he just puts in his hands without looking at what he's giving to. So just another story. These little tidbits I've got across, and is even how profoundly he wrote something with regards to now the Palestinian. He brought it home to us to say, the Afrikaners here, they used to be oppressed by the British. They used to be the ones that are oppressed. But then the oppressed one starts rising to be the oppressor as with their apartheid legacy. So he just takes it from another level, Maulana, that I also appreciate deeply with regards
Yes,
to,
yes,
that reflecting on his particular, when his thoughts are deep,
yes,
Maulana.
yes. I can attest first, and alhamdulillah, I also had the blessing of being in Malta in Egypt at the book fair. And I wasn't with that time with others. Yeah, I was on a separate occasion with my different year. And exactly as Maulana Mu'adh described, I can tell you it's exactly like that. When Malta goes, every person who asks, he gives. And I don't know if you've been to Egypt, but Egypt, everybody asks you for money. Like every second person, like if you're a foreigner, everybody asks you for money the whole time. And Malta just gives and gives and gives. He's not particularly wealthy either. He's, subhanAllah, immense personal sacrifice. And he has utter complete generosity. And with regard to his scholarship, I think one thing about his scholarship is that he has a, for me, almost like an unrivaled, in our time, he has an unrivaled reading of history. If we ask him any question in class unprepared, he would unpack that issue from prophetic, even pre-prophetic era until our time. And he has a deep understanding of history and the development of sciences. Sometimes with scholarship, we will start at the product of the science, the fiqh book, which is the outcome of the science, or the nahu book, which is the outcome of the science. You would understand the development and formation and background of those sciences, and it gives him a different level of appreciation. And his students, many people regard his students to be ulama. I mean, that's questionable sometimes. But his students will attest to the fact that definitely in the English speaking world, like for me, is unparalleled. I don't know too much about as much about the Arabic speaking world. It's a different world, but within the English speaking world, which I have access to, he's unparalleled in our time. And he's a hidden gem which the people of Cape Town don't even know. And I don't blame you for not knowing him. You know all his students, inshallah, most of his students. But he's something which someone who's very, very special. And his dream is, he has a madrasa for the last 25 years in Strand, and now they've purchased land to build a proper university there. Many of his teachers are doing their masters and the PhDs now, so he wants to actually register a formal university and make that the home of scholarship throughout the world. And at the moment, I mean, the madrasa in Strand attracts people from all over the world, from Africa, from the Western world, from the Far East. There are people there from all over the world there. Um, even though there's like no advertising, there's nothing. It's like the pushing strand. It's like really basic. But his Nia, and they've bought the property now. They've got the plans approved, and he wants to build an Islamic university uh, um, there to basically produce thought leadership for our times, for the world. And we make to Allah must return him to complete that niyyah, because for us there is no replacement for him. There is without him there's a lot of difficulty and struggles without him. Um, so that's where we're at the moment, and we try to convey to our students what we feel, but it's hard to fully convey our appreciation and what we feel towards him. Um, it is almost like I must take this the wrong way, but it's almost like a Sahabi would feel towards the Prophet. Uh, there's there are different elements of that kind of respect and love and commitment to simply because of the person's character, because of the person's knowledge, because of the person's just everything about that person. And so it's been a difficult week. Inshallah, I think it would be nice if you make a khatam for him, inshallah, and we have a Mizan khatam, or two khatams of Quran that we can make for him, inshallah, and maybe we can finish it together and make a collective dua for him. And there are many. I'm sure Mullah Zakaria gave you quite a few stories. Um, there are many stories about him. Really amazing stories about him. And but if you meet him, like don't expect like some sort of like formal alim. He's like a person like you meet, you think he's like a Buddha from Cape Town. You're like he doesn't carry himself like a big scholar. He carries himself like a normal person. You would be confused, you just wouldn't know it's him. He's just completely normal, and he's completely also Cape Townian. He speaks Afrikaans, he makes jokes as well. He's not like someone who is like at all very formal or very aloof or distant. He's warm, and he's from Strand. He's like a Cape Townian through and through. He makes our jokes and he makes us laugh, and he makes us cry as well. And you know what I mean? It's just that authenticity about the person as well, which is very uh, it's very approachable and loving. Um, Subhanallah. And he's like a father to all of us, and he calls us his sons, and that's the bond that we have. And it's a special bond to have with someone, and it's a bond that we as students we need with him. Like it's a bond that you need someone, because it's what you are dealing with when you are dealing with questions of Islam. You are dealing with something that has immense weight, because when someone asks you a question about Islam, or when you explain an ayah, you are taking it upon yourself to convey Allah's intent. What does Allah mean by this ayah? What ruling does Allah want for this? So you are taking upon yourself to convey the legacy of Islam, which is actually an immense weight. And to help you carry that weight, you need a reliable authority that you can lean upon, that can lay the foundation for you, that can lay the path for you. Otherwise, you can get completely lost. And that is the appreciation that we have, is that he has for us been that authority, that foundation, that clarity in our thought, that clarity in our approach. And you'll find that the students have a very similar way of speaking, a very similar approach to Islam, a very similar way of being balanced and tolerance, and also dedication to the legacy and commitment to authenticity of the legacy. And you need that, otherwise it's a very perilous situation to be in. So that is the appreciation when someone gives you an understanding of Deen, of Islam, of guidance. That is priceless. There's nothing, because there are tens of thousands of books. Like even just to know which book to read, you have to navigate so many different discussions. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. So that gift is a priceless gift. And I want us to also appreciate that Islam does not reside within books. Islam resides within people. And I mentioned to the first years also today that There were communities that went to North America, slaves from West Africa, who had Muslim names, who had ulama with them, were taken as slaves to North America. And those communities were not able to maintain a unbroken chain of scholars. And what happened was eventually Islam got lost, even to South America. Slaves went there, many Arabs went there as well. There were Muslim communities there, and those are all gone. They all became assimilated into the dominant culture. Many of them in South America became Catholics. There's no trace of that anymore. You might find a name here or a surname there, but it's gone completely. It has been erased from their culture. And our gift here, especially in Cape Town, our gift is that we have been able to maintain an unbroken chain of scholars, and not just maintain it, we have been able to grow it and make it a thriving community of huffaz, of ulama, of people who are studying Arabic like you are. It's an amazing thing that we have. And that gift rests with people of knowledge. And if there is one generation without people of knowledge, Islam will become lost, because after it's very difficult to revive it. So we have to appreciate that the gift that we have. And um, Malta has always emphasized that is our legacy. That is the legacy al-ulama warathul anbiya. That is our legacy. We are that this knowledge is the most important thing, and he has utter commitment to this knowledge. And that's been the beautiful. And also I think that uh, maybe the last thing, I think your students can speak about him for hours. Maybe the last thing I'll mention is that it's one thing to know the legacy. I mean, not one thing. I mean, that really is difficult. That's by no means easy. You could spend 20 years of your life and you could still struggle to understand the legacy of Islam. When I say the legacy, I mean how do you navigate 1,500 years of scholarship in a range of 20, 30 subjects? That itself is not easy. But I'm saying even if you do that, even if you do some of that, then you have to take that entire legacy and you have to apply it to the contemporary world, which is completely different to the world that the legacy was created in. So now you have a contemporary world of questions, of movements, of ideologies which are different from the past. And now you have to draw from that legacy and bring that teachings into this contemporary world. And alhamdulillah, in that sense, Muhammad has been our guide, and he has helped us to navigate that. How do we deal with these issues, whether it's fiqh issues, whether it's ideological issues, belief issues, sociological issues? How do we deal with that? And he's really been the gift to us that it helped us with that. And without him, I don't know where we'd be as individuals. And as a community, I think it's a gift that we have to appreciate deeply. So that is the gift also, is that bringing Islam into this modern world, which is so different from the ancient world, and doing it authentically, and doing it with the same, without betraying the legacy, but at the same time identifying the flexibility and the breadth within the legacy. And that's this gift that we've gotten. Alhamdulillah. Any questions or comments? His father was a famous scholar, and also his mother was an Azhari as well. I think I might be mistaken, but she might have been one of the first women from South Africa who went to Azhar. We can double check the history, inshallah. I might be wrong. But from not only his father's side, his mother's side also. And when his sister Munadia Karan passed away from VOC, rahimahullah, may Allah fill the grave with light. She wanted to be buried in I think it was a grandmother or great grandmother's grave. And when they dug up the grave, the body was still fresh, which is normally a sign of wilaya, a sign that the person is a waliya of Allah Ta'ala. So he has a great spiritual legacy as well, through both his father's side and his mother's side. Any other questions? What did Mawla Zakaria speak about? I mean, in brief.
He brought up the hadith where the scholars that with the scholars that we are losing of knowledge, that we're in a time like that.
No. إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا. That hadith. نعم.
Not sure, Maulana.
Alhamdulillah. So yeah, so Razia, Bismillah.
Yes, Maulana, Assalamu alaikum. Maulana Zakaria just spoke about the appreciation that we need to have for our scholars. And he spoke about what that means. Like he unpacked what does he mean by appreciating scholars and making use of the gift. And then also just a fervent appeal for dua from all of us.
Yeah, for us, it's not a personal thing. We're not looking for personal appreciation throughout all of this. It is that dedication towards the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I think that must be also clear in people's minds, is that we're not looking for any personal honor or status or anything. It is that commitment as a community to the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and people also valuing that legacy. We live in a time where everything is just devalued and everything is cheapened, and nothing has weight anymore because everything is like relative. It just doesn't like matter anymore, and anything is about like entertainment and about just temporary. It's just, you know what I mean. So in this time, there has to be like a real value of the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the collective of scholarship carries that legacy. And Alhamdulillah, you as students, you are part of carrying that legacy. And you as parents are going to carry the legacy to your children as well. And that is what we mean with regard to the appreciation of scholarship and scholars, is that this legacy is the only valuable thing we have. Everything else actually means very little. Everything else, whether we economically a rich community or poor community, that's only matters of the dunya. That's not really matters of seriousness. I mean, the matters of seriousness is the matters between you and Allah Ta'ala. And whichever path you choose, that's your own business. But that heart, the soul of this matter, lies with the word of Allah, the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the tireless dedication to those words by all of our scholars. And that is the appreciation that we need. And our fear is that it's going to become increasingly hard to maintain the appreciation of that legacy, because there is a whole other agenda and a whole other deconstruction of our faith, which is wanting to rip it apart. In fact, in the hadith, that same hadith Mullah Zakaria quoted, there will come a time when people will take رؤساء جهالا أفتوا بغير العلم فضلوا وأضلوا. That they will take leaders who are juhala, who have no knowledge, and they will become the leaders of society, and they will have titles. I am a doctor of this, I'm a professor of this, but they will have no ilm behind the title. The title will be empty. There's no ilm behind the title, but they've taken the mantle of leadership, the mantle of authority, but behind that mantle there is a vacuum. It's all hollow. And when people ask them a question, the Prophet says, فَأَفْتَوْا بِغَيْرِ عِلْم, that they will transmit their fatwas and their positions without any knowledge. The Prophet says, فَضَلُّوا وَأَضَلُّوا, then they are going to be themselves completely astray in dalala, lost, and they are going to lead other people completely astray. And this is the end of the hadith Mullah Zakaria quote. I'm not sure you quoted the whole hadith, but this is the end of the hadith that he quoted earlier. And so it's not about like personalities or personal honor. It's about people's guidance. Because if this legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam falls away or gets distorted, people's souls for eternity are put at risk. And that is the heaviest consideration. I mean, if you think about your own eternal life, it's the heaviest consideration that you can think of. Alhamdulillah. So make dua, inshallah, that he has his earnest dua, even if you don't know, you just make dua for him. Our hope is that we're making a khatam for him every day, that we're doing whatever we can. in the end, it's in the hands of Allah Ta'ala, and we submit to the decree of Allah Ta'ala, and we are pleased with whatever His decree is, and we alhamdulillah for all the ni'mas that we have. But we make fervent dua, Allah must return our beloved teacher to us in good health, and that he may continue to be the light that he is. And Allahu Amin. And Malta's words to us was to be optimistic, to have a good opinion of Allah Ta'ala, to be positive in the hope of Allah Ta'ala. And that is what we maintain, inshaAllah Ta'ala, with contentment with Allah's decree, whatever it may be. So I think what we should do, inshallah, is that we make intention to make a khatam for Manata, inshallah. What I'll do is I'll post it onto the chat, and then you can basically just choose the juz. We can take 1 or 2 days to read it, and then we can make the khatam together online with the teachers and dua again at the end of the khatam, because dua is all we have, and it's the most powerful weapon in the end. And we will appeal to Allah's decree to grant a good outcome, whatever it may be, inshallah ta'ala. Did Mullah Zakaria tell you the story about his house?
Maulana, he mentioned that they went there once to listen to a hadith, and it was he just mentioned how it was to sit in the house, but he didn't speak about the house itself.
No, I'm talking about the Mullah not having his own house.
Oh no.
I'll leave you with the story, inshallah. And the stories inspire the heart. Malta's madrasa started 25 years ago, and he is absolutely committed to the madrasa. It's his life, and he gives enormous personal sacrifice to it. And for most of his life, he was renting a house. He has many children, and he was renting a house, and all his kind of personal investment went into the madrasa. And then I think his honorable wife was like obviously like a bit concerned that after so many years that they have been renting, and it would be good if they could buy a place and become more stable and so on. And then Mata said that when he was young, he had a teacher called Hafiz Abdul Rahman, and this is the most beloved teacher to him. It was almost like his sheikh, his guide. And then he said his wife had a dream actually. The next after she spoke about this house, she had a dream that night, and then in that dream was Hafiz Abdul Rahman. And Hafiz Abdul Rahman told his wife that don't worry, let me show you something. And Hafiz Abdul Rahman showed his wife a wonderful like mansion, glowing house, which he understood to be a house of paradise. And his teacher then told his wife in the dream that don't worry about your house in this world. This is your house in the year after. And when she woke up, she narrated the story to him. So this is the kind of personal sacrifice that some of the ulama go through. Things that we consider to be basics, they would sacrifice. And these are all just kind of isharat, indications of bushra, and like glad tidings to have a dream like that, that these are special people that we are exposed to, that we have the blessing to be in their company. And not just on this intellectual level, but also on a spiritual level. So may that dream be a sign that his abode is waiting for him in paradise, for him and his family, and that all his sacrifices are appreciated by Allah Ta'ala. And alhamdulillah. Shukran for listening. I think that the teachers feel that it's, I don't know, we also it's difficult when someone is perhaps not going to return. It's difficult because then only maybe you truly appreciate that person. So we are obviously in a state where our minds are on him all the time. So shukran for listening, and I appreciate also the opportunity to speak about him. Alhamdulillah. And may Allah bless and protect you and your families. May Allah Ta'ala help us too on this path. Allahu Ameen. And inshallah, we'll do khatam together, inshallah. We will assign it via WhatsApp. And just remember in your du'as. And we'll see you next week, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام.
وعليكم السلام.
Walaikum salam, Maulana. May Allah make it easy on all of you, inshallah. Ameen.